Tennessee Bend was a small, forgotten town tucked between muddy riverbanks and thick pine woods. In the year 1892, every road looked the same, dusty, quiet, and lined with houses that all seemed to sigh under the weight of history. 12-year-old Elias Carter didn't want to move here. His father insisted it was a fresh start, but Elias didn't see how. Their new house was creaky, the nights were too quiet, and the only school in town looked like it had been built during the Civil War, and maybe never cleaned since. When Elias walked into room 7, the classroom smelled like chalk dust and damp wood. Desks were arranged in perfect rows, too perfect. Students whispered about him, the city boy. Miss B. Cartwright, the teacher, tapped her cane for silence. Everyone, welcome our new student. Elias nodded awkwardly and sat in the back. But the moment he placed his hand on his desk, it shifted, just a few inches to the right. He blinked. Maybe his foot bumped it? No. His feet were flat on the ground. He glanced around. Nobody else seemed surprised. It wasn't an accident, and Elias suddenly hated Tennessee Bend a whole lot more. At lunch, he cornered the quiet girl who sat 2 rows ahead, Maggie Doyle. You saw that, right? My desk moved. Maggie stopped mid-bite of her cornbread. You're not supposed to talk about it, she whispered. Her pale blue eyes darted around nervously. Why? Elias asked. Because Miss Cartwright says it only happens when someone misbehaves, and if it does, it means the one who built the desks is angry. Elias frowned. Who built them? Maggie leaned closer. They say a carpenter died in this room 30 years ago. His ghost can't stand a messy classroom or rude children. Elias snorted. You believe that? But Maggie didn't laugh. Believe what you want. Just don't break the rules. Elias smiled like he wasn't scared, but inside, he was already imagining invisible fingers pushing his desk. Miss Cartwright was strict, too strict. Line straight, back straight, mind straight, she often said while tapping that cane like a warning. Every time someone talked too loudly, a desk scraped. Every time someone dropped a pencil, another shifted. Every time someone whispered a joke, several desks jerked a full inch. The scraping of wood on wood echoed like a threat. Elias tried not to stare, but it was impossible. The desks moved on their own, always returning to perfect rows. It felt like the classroom itself was watching. One evening, Elias asked his father if he believed in ghosts. His father, a stubborn man with hard hands, shook his head. Ghosts are for children. Work hard, keep quiet, and this town will treat you fine. But that night Elias couldn't sleep. Wind rattled their windows. The old pine trees scraped the glass like claws. He dreamed of room 7. In the dream, desks marched across the classroom floor, forming a circle around him. No matter how he screamed or pushed, he couldn't escape. He woke up drenched in sweat and with a growing suspicion. The desks didn't move because of misbehavior. They moved because they were trying to say something. On the 3rd week, a boy named Thomas Reed, funny, fearless, and always smiling, sat next to Elias at lunch. So, the desks gave you a welcome party? Thomas laughed. You're not scared? Elias asked. Scared? No? Curious? Yes? Thomas leaned in. Because my older brother told me something before he left this school. He left? Elias interrupted. Thomas's playful grin faded. He refused to sit in his desk one morning. It dragged him across the room. The teacher said he ran away after that. But desks don't drag you for nothing. Elias swallowed. What do you think they want? Thomas tapped his fingers, thinking. They want us to find something. And Elias realized Thomas might be the only person in town who wasn't pretending everything was normal. The next day, Miss Cartwright wrote arithmetic problems on the chalkboard. Thomas passed Elias a note. Let's stay after class. We'll watch the desks move when no one else is around. Elias hesitated. Disobeying rules never ended well here. He shoved the note into his desk, and instantly the desk lurched forward a foot. Bam! The entire class froze. Miss Cartwright slowly turned, her face tightening. Elias Carter, keep your desk in place. She pointed her cane. The wooden floor beneath his desk vibrated as if warning him. Elias's heartbeat thudded in his ears. The desks weren't just reacting, they were listening. When the final bell rang, Elias and Thomas pretended to pack slowly. Maggie stayed too, her eyes pleading silently, "Don't do this." Miss Cartwright left the room, locking the door with a heavy click. Silence. The three kids stood still. Then, "Shh, crappy." One desk moved, then another. They slid into new positions, forming a crooked line, pointing toward the back wall where old coat hooks hung. Elias's throat went dry. "Are they showing us something?" Thomas approached the wall and pushed gently. A faint click. A hidden panel opened. Behind it was a dusty newspaper clipping pinned to the wall. "Carpenter found dead in classroom, 1862. Local craftsman Isaiah Boone dies while constructing school desks." Maggie whispered, trembling. "He died building them." Elias stared at the desks, suddenly feeling sorry, not scared. But then the panel slammed shut, throwing dust everywhere. The desks returned to their rows, violently. Something didn't want them to look too closely. The next morning, the principal, a cold man named Mr. Granger, called Elias, Thomas, and Maggie into his office. "You were in the classroom after hours," he said, flatly. "Room 7 is to remain undisturbed." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do not meddle with old tragedies. This school does not need curiosity." Elias clenched his fists. "We didn't break anything." Mr. Granger tapped his pen twice. "You will sit quietly, learn quietly, leave quietly." He glanced at Elias, "Especially you." As they left, Thomas whispered, "He's hiding something." Elias nodded, "And the desks know it." Later that week, Elias noticed something carved beneath his desk. He ran his fingers over the rough letters. "Help us." Elias called Thomas and Maggie over. Each checked their desks. All three had identical carvings. Maggie panicked. "Why us?" Elias said, voice shaking but determined. "Because we're the only ones paying attention." Thomas grabbed a pocket knife. "There has to be more." He scratched deeper into the wood, and exposed older writing burned into the underside. "Not finished." Elias's breath caught. Not finished building? Not finished? Resting? Suddenly the desks stomped, legs slamming against the floor like a room full of warning hearts beating too fast. The chalkboard screeched, chalk writing formed on its own. "Find the blueprints." The children froze. It was the clearest message yet. Elias, Maggie, and Thomas huddled outside under the oak tree during recess, voices low. Thomas laid out the facts. A carpenter died while building the desks. The school's leaders want the past buried. The desks might be trying to fix a mistake. "What do the blueprints have to do with it?" Maggie asked. Elias's mind spun. "Blueprints show how something was meant to be made. Maybe the desks were unfinished, so the carpenter's spirit is trapped." Thomas grinned, excited by the mystery. "So we find the blueprints, free the ghost, save the school from killer desks. Easy." Maggie shook her head. "This isn't funny. What if the desks turn violent? What if someone gets hurt?" Elias placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "We won't let that happen. We're working with the desks, not against them." The desks only got angry when they were ignored. Thomas stood up and dusted his pants. "We searched the old storage cellar tonight. That's where they keep forgotten things." Elias nodded. Maggie reluctantly agreed. As the bell rang, Room 7's windows glimmered under the sun, like a pair of watchful eyes. Whatever came next, the desks would be waiting. Night came swiftly over Tennessee Bend. The three children met behind the school, the moonlight cutting through clouds like silver blades. Thomas had swiped a rusty key from the janitor's rack earlier. One-time use only, he joked nervously. They crept to the cellar doors, thick, iron, and covered in vines. The lock resisted. Elias whispered, "Come on." Click. The doors groaned open, coughing up cold air, filled with dust and memories. They descended old stone steps into darkness. Thomas lit a lantern. Shelves stacked with forgotten books, broken furniture, and old uniforms surrounded them like silent witnesses. Then Maggie gasped. On a central table covered in cobwebs lay a rolled sheet tied with blue ribbon. Blueprints. Elias reached out. But before he could touch them, the cellar door slammed shut above them. Thomas lifted the lantern higher. They unrolled the blueprint carefully. It wasn't just a desk design. It was a classroom layout. Each desk had a number. Each number had a name. And written across the bottom in rushed handwriting, "They can't leave." Isaiah Boone. Maggie's voice trembled. "Who can't leave?" As if answering her question, the walls creaked. Footsteps echoed above them. Heavy, slow. Thomas swallowed. "We need to get out." He shoved at the cellar door, locked. The desks upstairs began to move, scraping, dragging, pounding. The desks were panicking. Elias looked back at the blueprint and spotted another note scratched faintly at the edges. "Not complete. At Freedom Row." Elias blinked. "What's Freedom Row?" Suddenly, the shelves toppled as if shoved. The message was clear: finish what the carpenter never could. The door swung open, not by a child's hand. Miss Cartwright stood there, lantern raised, face cold as winter iron. "You shouldn't have looked for this," she hissed. Elias, clutching the blueprint, stepped forward. "You knew the desk's move. You knew the carpenter was trapped." Miss Cartwright's eyes flashed with something painful. "He wasn't just the carpenter. He was my father," Maggie gasped. Thomas stared wide-eyed. Miss Cartwright continued, voice breaking. "He died before finishing his dream. He wanted a classroom where no child felt small or powerless. After he died, the principal ordered the desks nailed down, made the classroom rigid. He destroyed my father's legacy." Elias realized the moving desks weren't punishing kids. They were fighting the rules, fighting for what the carpenter wanted: freedom. Miss Cartwright stepped closer. "I have tried to keep his spirit calm, but the desks, they believe you three can finish his work." "We can," Elias said, heart pounding. "We just need to know how." Miss Cartwright hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You must rearrange the desks into the design he drew here." She pointed to a row on the blueprint that curved outward like open arms. "Freedom Row." "But," she warned, "the principal will try to stop you. He fears change more than anything." The children exchanged a glance. This wasn't just a ghost story. This was a chance to make things right. A thunderstorm rolled in as they sneaked into Room 7. Lightning flashed through the tall windows, illuminating the desks, perfectly aligned, soldiers waiting for a command. Elias laid the blueprint on Maggie's desk. Thomas cracked his knuckles. Time to build Freedom Row. As they pushed the desks, each one shuddered, then willingly slid into place. The room filled with the sound of wood scraping, each desk eager to take its rightful spot. Maggie counted softly. 4 more left. Boom! The door burst open. Principal Granger stormed in. "You three again? Step away." Lightning flashed again. The desks blocked his path, clattering to form a barricade. Granger screamed, "You are misbehaving." Elias looked him in the eye. "No, we're learning. To be free." Granger grabbed a desk and tried to drag it back. The desk threw him against the chalkboard. The lights flickered. Dust rained from the ceiling. Thomas yelled, "Finish the formation!" They rushed to move the last desks. Suddenly, the chalkboard cracked down the middle, splinters of black slate falling. A roar echoed through the walls, not angry, but desperate. Elias felt it in his bones. Isaiah Boone was rising. The final desk jerked violently toward its spot. Thomas and Elias shoved with all their strength. It clicked into place. Silence. Then, crack. The chalkboard split open entirely, revealing a hidden space behind. Inside lay a simple wooden toolbox, Isaiah Boone's toolbox. The classroom lights surged bright white. A gentle wind swept across the room. Yet the windows were shut tight. The desks bowed slightly forward, like children greeting a beloved teacher. From the toolbox, glowing dust began to swirl, forming the outline of a tall man with calloused hands and kind, sorrowful eyes. Isaiah Boone. He looked at Miss Cartwright, his daughter, who was now crying freely. "I never wanted them trapped," he spoke, voice echoing like wood under hammer. "I wanted them to feel safe, seen, equal." Elias stepped forward, tears burning his eyes. "We know, and we finished it for you." Isaiah smiled, the kind of smile that carries years of regret and hope. "You freed me." He placed a transparent hand on his daughter's cheek. "You kept my dream alive." Granger scrambled to his feet. "This school runs on order," he shouted. "Children must obey." Isaiah turned to him, disappointed. "Order without care is cruelty." The desks scraped, forming words along the floor. Respect, kindness, voice. Isaiah looked to the children. "A classroom should help every child grow, not silence them." Miss Cartwright wiped her tears, standing taller. "This school will change, I promise." Granger stared, speechless, as the desks lined themselves into the new formation, the blueprint complete. Isaiah's spirit began to shimmer. His work was done. Isaiah looked at the three brave children. To Elias, "Thank you for questioning what others accepted." To Thomas, "Thank you for your courage to explore the unknown." To Maggie, "Thank you for protecting what others feared." They each felt warmth surround them, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Isaiah's final words drifted like sawdust in summer air. "Never let anyone take away your seat at the table." Then he faded, gently, peacefully, finally free. The toolbox closed on its own with a soft click, and room 7 glowed, alive with purpose. The desks never marched violently again, but they still moved, slowly, contently, adjusting themselves so every student sat in Freedom Row. Miss Cartwright became the most beloved teacher in Tennessee Bend. Children laughed more. Voices were heard. Ideas flourished. The principal retired early, unable to handle a school built on freedom instead of fear. Elias, Maggie, and Thomas were no longer just students. They were guardians of the promise the desks made, a classroom where no child felt alone, no voice went unheard, no dream was unfinished. And every year when a new student arrived nervous and unsure, a desk would slide gently toward them, making room, welcoming them into the legacy of Isaiah Boone, the carpenter who never stopped caring.